The most dangerous thing a man can do is let someone underestimate him. I did it on purpose. My name is Nathan Prescott, and on a Thursday morning in March, Victoria made the mistake that had been coming for 2 years. I was at the kitchen table in our home in Queen Anne, Seattle, drinking my first coffee, still in yesterday's shirt, reading nothing in particular. Normal morning. Quiet morning. Victoria was already dressed. Full armor, blazer, heels, that particular shade of confidence she put on with her lipstick when she had board meetings. She set a manila envelope on the table next to my mug without breaking stride. "My lawyers drafted something," she said, scrolling through her phone. "I should have done it from the beginning. I've worked too hard to leave anything to chance." I looked at the envelope, her firm's letterhead on the label, a little too crisp, a little too ready. "What is this?" I said, though some quiet, watchful part of me already knew. "A prenuptial agreement," she said, the way you say the dry cleaning's ready. Flat. Logistical. "I know the timing isn't ideal, but we've been married 2 years, Nathan. Which is exactly why we need clarity going forward." She finally looked up, offered that particular smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Take your time reading it. My lawyers are available if you have questions." She grabbed her bag, walked to the door, and didn't kiss me goodbye. She hadn't done that in 6 months. I'd counted. The door clicked shut. I sat there. The envelope sat there with me. I picked it up, put it down, picked it up again. 11 pages. Her signature already on page 9. Her lawyer's contact cards paperclipped to the front like this was a real estate closing and I was just supposed to sign and move on. I read every word, and somewhere around page 6, where my assets were described as unverified and presumed minimal, something shifted in my chest. Not anger, clarity. But this story doesn't start on that Thursday morning. It starts 3 years earlier, on a rainy Tuesday night in late January, when Victoria Voss walked into my life at a University of Washington alumni event wearing a charcoal dress and a smile that probably had a terms and conditions section I hadn't read yet. I was standing near the back by the appetizer table because that's where the real people stand, nursing a sparkling water and wondering why I'd let my college friend Greg talk me into coming. "You haven't been out since you closed the deal," Greg had said. "You're becoming one of those guys." "What guys?" "The kind who names their houseplants." "I don't have houseplants, Greg." "Exactly. That's worse." She found me, I know that now. But that Tuesday night in January, I just thought I was lucky. "You're not working the room," she said, appearing beside me. "Neither are you," I said. She laughed. Actually laughed, not the practiced kind. Touché. Victoria Voss, CEO of a mid-sized logistics firm called Axiom Partners. Growing fast, investor-backed, the whole package. Sharp, funny in that dry, understated way I can't resist. She looked at me like I was a puzzle she hadn't solved yet. I should have recognized that look. I've used it myself. Here's what Victoria thought she knew about Nathan Prescott that January night. Comfortable consultant, nice condo, sensible car, low-key by nature. Here's what was actually true. 3 years before I met her, I'd quietly sold a supply chain software company I'd built over 8 years to a private equity firm in Boston for a number my accountant still gets nervous saying out loud. No press release. No LinkedIn announcement. I signed the papers, went home to Queen Anne, ordered Thai food, and watched a documentary about migratory birds. That was it. Money that makes noise attracts problems. I'd watched enough men implode chasing recognition to understand that the quietest person in the room is usually the most dangerous one. Victoria thought she was dating a comfortable, low-profile consultant. She was dating a man who held stakes in 9 companies, owned real estate across 3 countries and holding entities she'd never heard of, and hadn't told a single person his actual net worth in years. We dated for 13 months. She introduced me at her company events as her brilliant, low-key partner, like I was some kind of artisanal accessory. I wore the role well. My buddy Greg pulled me aside at one of those events about 2 months before the wedding. She introduces you like a prop. You know that. She's proud of me, Greg. He set down his drink. She introduces her Q3 results with more warmth than she introduces you. I laughed it off. We got married on a Saturday in April. Small ceremony. Her idea. 24 people. Rain sitting low over Puget Sound the way it does on Seattle mornings that can't decide if they're beautiful or just cold. The first year of marriage was good. I mean that sincerely. Then came month 17. It was a Sunday evening. Victoria was at the office again. I was home reviewing investment documents. We shared a household cloud drive, tax records, insurance, property deeds, standard things. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for our homeowner's insurance renewal and took a wrong turn through a subfolder labeled Archive. And there it was, a document titled Exit Strategy N. My first thought, that's a very clean font for something that's about to ruin my Sunday. I opened it, read it twice, then sat very still for about 4 minutes, which if you know me is 4 minutes longer than I sit still for anything. 12 pages, thorough, clinical. Our marriage laid out as an asset management structure, my financial profile, or what she thought was my financial profile, a timeline broken into years. Year 2, consolidate joint accounts. Year 3, increase her public asset base. Year 5, initiate dissolution. And on page 7, a name, Colin Marsh, partner at Axiom Partners, always called me buddy, to my face, twice. I closed the laptop, went to the kitchen, made pasta from scratch, because some situations require the kind of focus that only comes from kneading dough. Opened a bottle of Washington Red, and sitting there in the quiet of that kitchen, I understood something almost worse than the betrayal itself. She hadn't chosen me in spite of my invisibility. She'd chosen me because of it. No social media presence, no Forbes profile, no ego requiring public maintenance. A man who'd sold a company for a number nobody outside his accountant knew about and celebrated with Thai food and a bird documentary. I was, in her careful estimation, the perfect financial hiding place. A steady, modest, low-profile husband neutralizes investor noise, makes an ambitious woman look grounded. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't even really a husband. I was a strategy with a wedding ring. And the most dangerous part, she was right about everything she thought she knew about me. She just never thought to research what quiet men do when they've been underestimated. She came home at 8:40 that evening. Something smells good. Cassio e Pepe, sit down, she sat. We ate. She told me about her day. I told her about mine, the edited version. We had wine. I cleaned up. We went to bed. And while she slept, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision that would take the better part of 2 years to execute. No confrontation, no explosion, no scene. Because here's the thing about a long con, the only way to beat it is to run a longer one. Which brings me back to that Thursday morning and the envelope on my kitchen table. Minimal assets. I almost laughed out loud at that word. I finished my coffee, picked up my phone, and called the one man I should have called 5 months ago. Frank Delano, my attorney, old friend, sharper than he looks, which is saying something because he looks like a man who argues with referees at his kids' soccer games. He's been with me since company number 1. He picked up on the second ring. Frank, I need you to come to Seattle. When? As soon as you can. That bad? I looked out the window at Puget Sound, the rain just starting. No, I said, it's about to get that good. I told Frank everything. He didn't interrupt once, rare for Frank, who interrupts judges. When I finished, he sat back, stared at the ceiling. She documented it, he said quietly. 12 pages, I said. He looked at me directly. That's either incredibly arrogant or incredibly stupid. Both, I said, which is exactly what we're going to use. We got to work the following Monday. First, a new holding entity. Frank registered it in Wyoming over a weekend. We called it Clearwater Ridge LLC. Clean, boring, the kind of name that makes accountants yawn and lawyers stop reading. The first move through Clearwater Ridge was the one that mattered most. A 14% stake in Axiom Partners, Victoria's company, her baby, the centerpiece of her entire 5-year plan. I bought in silently, through a secondary holding company that connected to Clearwater Ridge, the way a shadow connects to a man, only visible if you know exactly where the light is coming from. She never looked for the light. Frank spread the purchase across 3 tranches so no single transaction tripped a disclosure flag. Clean. Invisible. About 8 weeks after she dropped that prenup on my kitchen table, I owned a quiet piece of the very company she was most determined to protect from me. She made me dinner that evening and called me her favorite person. I told her she was full of surprises. She had absolutely no idea how right I was. People don't understand when I tell this story. They expect me to say I checked out, got cold, stopped caring. I didn't. I made dinner, remembered anniversaries, walked the waterfront trails with her on Sunday mornings like we always had. Because the moment I changed, the moment she sensed even a slight shift in temperature, everything unraveled. Victoria could read a room the way most people read large print books, effortlessly, instantly. So I gave her nothing to read, smiled, showed up, poured the wine, and every Saturday morning drove quietly to my office in Pioneer Square and dismantled everything she thought she'd built around me. Nobody said revenge had to look like revenge. Sometimes it looks exactly like a happy marriage. But I want to be honest about something, because this story isn't just about strategy. There were nights, I won't tell you how many, where I sat at that kitchen table alone after she'd gone to bed and felt something I didn't have a clean name for. Not anger, not even sadness. Something closer to grief. The quiet kind that doesn't announce itself. I had genuinely loved this woman, or I'd loved who I thought she was, which might be the same thing, which might be worse. There was one night in particular, December rain hammering the Queen Anne windows. She was asleep. I was sitting in the dark kitchen with a glass of whiskey I wasn't drinking, staring at nothing. And it hit me all at once, not the betrayal, not the plan, just the simple, stupid fact that I had walked into that alumni event in January and thought I was lucky. Some stubborn, foolish part of me had wanted it to be real even after I found the file. I sat with that for about 10 minutes. Then I poured the whiskey out, rinsed the glass, and went back to bed. And the next morning I drove to Pioneer Square and kept building. Because wanting something to be different and letting it destroy you are 2 very different choices. I made mine. By that summer I moved into the logistics play. She talked about her vendors constantly at dinner. The Portland contract is bleeding us. The Chicago carrier can't hit last-mile targets. I nodded, sympathized, refilled her glass. I was also taking notes. 2 of Axiom's largest freight suppliers were running thin margins and quietly shopping for capital partners. I bought into both. Not controlling stakes, nothing loud. Just enough presence at the table when contract renewals came up. Just enough that when Victoria's team sat down to renegotiate, the people across from them were several invisible layers removed, connected to me. She was negotiating against people who reported to me. I'm not going to pretend that didn't feel a little good. That fall, Frank called on a Tuesday morning. "Colin Marsh," he said. I sat down my coffee. "Talk to me." He runs a small personal investment fund on the side. He's been quietly looking for someone to anchor a second raise. Quietly, my favorite word. How much? $2 million to anchor. He'd take less from the right partner. Become the right partner, I said. Arm's length, Frank, 4 layers minimum. He cannot know it's me. Ralph, he called you buddy to your face. I know, 4 layers. Frank actually laughed. By early winter, I was a silent limited partner in Colin Marsh's personal investment fund. The man whose name was on page 7 of my wife's exit strategy. The man who'd shaken my hand at 3 company dinners and called me buddy, was now, completely unknowingly, in business with me. By January of the following year, here's what the board looked like. Clearwater Ridge holding 14% of Axiom, both freight suppliers carrying my capital. Colin Marsh's fund anchored 4 layers deep by Nathan Prescott. And Victoria having her best quarter yet, investors patient, board happy. No idea that the foundation under everything she'd built had a different owner. She was standing on my floors and calling it her house. Thursday morning, exactly 1 year to the day after she dropped that envelope on my kitchen table, Frank called at 9, "Everything's in position. You want me to start the counter document?" "Not a counter," I said. "A revelation, 47 pages. I want her lawyers to sit down when they open it." 2 weeks later, Frank walked into my office carrying the document, set it on the desk like he was handling something that could detonate. I read every page slowly. This was everything: 9 tech investments, real estate across 3 countries, the logistics network, both suppliers fully documented, Clearwater Ridge's 14% stake in Axiom, and the Marsh Fund. All 4 layers fully traceable back to me. I looked at the document, 47 pages. Her prenup had been 11. She brought a knife. I came back with a different kitchen entirely. "Send it," I said. The response came a few days later, not from Victoria, from her lead attorney. Frank told me the call lasted 5 minutes and that the attorney spoke the way people speak when every word is a step across ice. "Mr. Delano," he said carefully, "your client's holdings are considerably more substantial than previously understood." "Yes," Frank said. "They are." A long silence. "Mr. Prescott would like to revisit the terms of the prenuptial agreement." Frank looked across at me. I shook my head once. "Mr. Prescott wouldn't change a word," Frank said. "Your client's terms, every one." "I see," said the attorney. "I'll be in touch." Frank hung up, looked at me. "How do you feel?" I thought about a Sunday evening 17 months ago. A clean font on a document never meant for my eyes. A ceiling I'd stared at while the woman beside me slept and dreamed of year 5. "Hungry?" I said. "Let's go get something good." There is a moment in every long game when the board shifts. Not with an explosion, just a quiet, irreversible tilt, like a ship that's already decided to go down but hasn't told the passengers yet. That moment came a few days after that call. Victoria came home early. That was the first sign. Victoria never came home early. But there she was, mid-afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in. No blazer, no laptop, no phone in her hand. "Nathan," she said it the way people say a name when they've stopped performing. "Clearwater Ridge," she said. I turned around, leaned against the counter. "What about it?" "You know what about it." The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, Seattle was doing its thing. Rain on the windows, traffic on Queen Anne Avenue, someone's dog, the whole ordinary world moving like nothing had happened. "How long?" she asked. "Since the Sunday I found the file." She closed her eyes for a second, just long enough to see the calculation happening behind them. "You never said anything," she said. "Neither did you." She stood up, walked to the window, stood there with her back to me, looking out at the street. "What do you want, Nathan?" she said finally. "What do you actually want?" I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the real answer. What did I want? I had wanted a real marriage. I had wanted the woman I met at that alumni event in January, the one who laughed before I finished the joke, the one who showed up. But that woman had been a performance, and you can't want back something that never existed. "Nothing you haven't already offered," I said. "The prenup stands, your terms, every word." She stared at me, waiting for the catch. "You have 14% of my company." "I do. And the suppliers, me and Colin. 4 layers," I said, "but yes." She shook her head slowly, not in anger, in something that looked like disbelief. "You built all of that," she said, "while living here, having dinner with me, walking the waterfront on Sunday mornings." "You were planning year 5, I said. "I was planning the rest of the board." She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was composed, the CEO voice, but her eyes were different. "I underestimated you," she said. I held her gaze. "Yes," I said, "you did." She nodded once, picked up her bag, and walked out of the kitchen. I heard the front door close. I stood at the window for a while, looking out at the same street she just looked at. It didn't feel like winning. Not exactly. It felt like something ending that should have ended differently from the very beginning. I poured a glass of water, drank it standing at the sink. Then I called Frank. She knows. How'd she take it? I thought about that for a second. Like herself, I said, right up until the end. The formal dissolution proceeded exactly as Victoria had engineered it, except she'd engineered it around a man who didn't exist. The prenup she drafted protected everything she'd publicly declared. Her real estate, her personal accounts, her declared axiom equity. It said nothing about Clearwater Ridge, nothing about the freight suppliers, nothing about the Marsh Fund. Because she'd written that prenup in a world where Nathan Prescott was a comfortable low-profile consultant with minimal assets. She'd protected herself against the man she thought she married. She had no protection against the man she actually married. The papers were signed on a Tuesday morning in late May. I moved to an apartment in Capitol Hill with a view of the city that was completely indifferent to everyone's problems. I stood at that window the first night with a glass of Washington Red and felt something I hadn't felt in almost 2 years. Still. Not happy exactly. Not triumphant. Just still, like a room after a long noise finally stops and you realize how loud it had been the whole time. That summer, Axiom's board reached out to Frank. They were looking for stability. Clearwater Ridge's stake commanded a conversation. Would Mr. Prescott consider a formal role? I called Frank back. Tell them I'll take the chairmanship. Not the advisory role, the chairmanship. Someone needs to actually run the thing. You know she's going to see that announcement. I know. I looked out at Puget Sound in the late afternoon. The ferries moving across the gray water, slow and indifferent and completely unbothered by anyone's 5-year plan. It's just business, I said. Greg called when the announcement went out. I saw it, the chairmanship. Morning, Greg. A pause. Nathan, I told you. You told me she was intentional. And you're okay? I thought about that. Really thought about it. The December night with the whiskey I didn't drink. The ceiling I stared at. The pasta I made for two while a 12-page document sat 3 feet away on the desk. Yeah, I said, I'm okay. And the thing is, I meant it.